may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, fair warning here. Okay, don't say I didn't warn you. I'm probably going to come across very arrogant. I'm going to be running some victory laps here, but we just had a fantastic week. I mean, I swear to God, everything that we called, it was W after W after W after W. I mean, so excited to break down exactly what happened in week 3, our takeaways going into week 4 and the rest of the season. But of course, before we get into it, make sure you go subscribe to the channel if you have not done so for whatever reason. I mean, my God, if you have not subscribed by now, make sure you fix that. Also, drop a like on this video and leave a comment with any takeaway that you may have, any question you may have as well, because you know exactly what we're about to do. We're giving away some Fantasy Flock Network hats here. We're about to give away 2 from comments on the last video that we had. Let's pull up that last video so we can just pick a couple of random comments. So we'll get right to the questions. And this first one that we are going to have is coming out from Tyler Martin, who says, thanks for everything. We're 2-0 with Barkley being by the first 2-week flop. Can't wait to be called for that hat. Keep up the great work. Okay, so Tyler, of course, I guess you knew that you were getting called for the hat. Congrats on winning one, my friend. And now our next one is going to be coming out from Grant, who says, hey, how do you feel about Kyle Pitts over Gronk this week and the whole year? I mean, it doesn't really matter what we think about this week because this video is being recorded after the week. You're saying, oh, love a hat, love the videos, keep it up. My friend, thank you. I mean, for everything. You just got yourself a flock hat as well. All you have to do is send an email to the email in the description of the video if you won that flock hat with your physical address. That way I can get that to you ASAP. And let's go through. Let's talk about these takeaways, and let's start it off back on Thursday night. And that is DJ Moore, a certified alpha. DJ Moore, a certified stud here. 12 targets, 8 receptions, 126 receiving yards, looking dominant as he did it. Now, yes, keep in mind, this was against the Houston Texans. But something I really want to point out here is what we have had so far through the first few weeks in Carolina with the target breakdown with these wide receivers. Is if we remember what happened back in 2020, it was concerning with the new coaching staff coming in Joe Brady and Matt Rule, and how they were just implementing both DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson in this offense. They were using DJ Moore a little more like a field stretching wide receiver, which was very weird. And they were definitely just getting a considerable amount of targets to Robbie Anderson, like targets over the middle and such, stuff that we were not expecting in the slightest. Now, thank God that they go through and at the end of the season kind of change that out, where they are all of a sudden using DJ Moore in his usual flanker role. Well, now DJ Moore is just getting used in the Alpha X wide receiver role. I mean, this is someone that's getting all the targets in the world. We're not having to worry about Robbie Anderson at all. I mean, this is what we said after week 1. If y'all remember, I mean, we have nailed Robbie Anderson so far this year, where in week 1, I said he was a must-start guy going up against the New York Jets based on a multitude of reasons. He came out. We got very lucky with this call. He had 3 targets. Now, with those 3 targets, he had 1 catch, but it was a long touchdown for like 60-plus yards. And then since then, we've said Robbie Anderson is someone you cannot consider starting any given week, despite the matchup, as his role in this offense has shrunk to a point where Robbie Anderson really is a player that's at the end of your bench at this point. I mean, you can't consider playing Robbie Anderson anytime soon. And it's because DJ Moore here getting all the targets, especially when we are going to have, I mean, keep in mind, Christian McCaffrey going down is going to be opening up even more targets in this offense, as Christian McCaffrey was someone that you could easily guarantee he was going to get his 8 targets a game. So DJ Moore, an alpha wide receiver. I mean, someone you have to be jumping up in the tier. I don't want to say that Justin Jefferson tier, but pretty close to it. I mean, I think you have to be viewing him in almost the same light here as the players that were going around Keenan Allen in fantasy drafts this year, like the Keenan Allen, the CeeDee Lamb, the Terry McLaurin. DJ Moore is right there, if not above those guys. Now, our next player is going to be a very simple one, but I do want to address it. Josh Allen is back. Now, with Josh Allen, I mean, in week 2, he comes out, drops that 35-point week against the Miami Dolphins. But Josh Allen himself really didn't have the fantasy production go along with it, because you had 2 rushing touchdowns from Zach Moss. You had a rushing touchdown as well from Devin Singletary. Well, Josh Allen comes out this week with 43 pass attempts, 32 completions, 358 passing yards, but more importantly, 4 passing touchdowns and a rushing touchdown to go along with it. I'm here, Josh Allen, clearly just that stud quarterback that you can confidently build around with your team. And I'll say right now, if you have Josh Allen, There's no reason at all for you to be having a second quarterback on your roster. Please make sure you understand that with the caliber of a quarterback that Josh Allen is, he is matchup proof, and this is someone you're playing every week regardless. So if you have someone else that we may really like Matthew Stafford, I mean, you shouldn't be rostering both of those guys every single week, just burning a roster spot. Instead, you should go through and try to trade one of those quarterbacks to get an upgrade somewhere else, because when you have Josh Allen, I mean, clearly what we saw last year as well as what we just saw over the past 2 weeks, this is someone that you're starting every single week. Now let's go over to a backfield that y'all know we had a lot to talk about at the beginning of this season, as well as leading up to the season. Let's go over to Cleveland right here, where with the Cleveland Browns, you were seeing that, who we have called a committee running back time and time again, that what we have said is Nick Chubb, with the role that he has in this offense, is entirely touchdown dependent. And that's what happens. This is illustrated this week. When we come out, we see Nick Chubb, a pretty damn good week, 84 rushing yards. Not bad. That came with 0 targets out of the backfield. And when you're getting 0 targets out of the backfield, it makes it where you just don't have that high of a floor in fantasy leagues. Because, the problem is in a PPR format, when Nick Chubb comes out, he gets 22 carries, he gets 84 rushing yards, and 0 targets out of the backfield. This leads to him having 8 fantasy points this week. This leads to him having the same exact day that you'd see from James White. If James White came out and had 25 rushing yards and he had just say 3 receptions, and then to go along with that, an additional 30, receiving yards. It's nothing in terms of his actual fantasy production. And on the other hand, someone that we were drafting everywhere, I think without Jarvis Landry in the lineup, Kareem Hunt is going to be someone that you are having to start consistently. You look at this stat line for Kareem Hunt. This is exactly what we talk about, trying to identify the player that's going significantly later in fantasy drafts that, has a similar floor ceiling combination with Kareem Hunt here. He comes out 10 carries. With those 10 carries, 81 rushing yards. But more importantly, he gets the rushing touchdown. We have seen Kareem Hunt multiple times now have that role in the red zone. And then to go along with this, 6 receptions out of the backfield, 74 receiving yards. He has 155 total yards, 28 fantasy points to go alongside it. You're looking right now, and I know people are going to be surprised to see this, but y'all know I have to run these victory laps. I know I'm sounding like an ass. I don't care. We got so much hate for saying do not draft Nick Chubb in the first. Instead, draft Kareem Hunt in the 6th. Kareem Hunt right now, the running back 10 in fantasy. When you have Nick Chubb as the running back 12 on a per game basis, feeling good with all the leagues that we have Kareem Hunt. Another thing that we're feeling good about is, y'all know how excited we were about Trey Lance and how much we wanted to be avoiding Justin Fields. Justin Fields comes out this week and just looks like a straight up bum. Justin Fields coming out, and I know the offensive line did him no favors. I know Cleveland was able to get to him consistently. We said this was a bad matchup for Chicago all along, but you can't blame everything here on the offensive line. 6 completions this week. 6 completions, 20 passing attempts. 68 passing yards to go along with this. I don't know who we can start with Chicago from now on. This was an offense that I loved going after Allen Robinson. I thought Allen Robinson was a fantastic value in the middle of the 3rd rounds. But the problem is now you're looking at Allen Robinson, and he had exactly what you look for with an alpha wide receiver this week. He had a 30% team target share. He had 6 targets in this offense. That's exactly what you're trying to get from these wide receivers. Now, despite him having 30% of his team's targets, he comes out 2 receptions for 27 receiving yards. Just frankly, it doesn't matter if he's soaking up 40% of the receiving yards in Chicago right now, because Justin Fields, if he can't get anything going for this offense, it's a scenario where I don't know if we can start Allen Robinson. Of course, we were never drafting Darnell Mooney, but we were drafting Allen Robinson in a considerable amount of leagues. Maybe it's my fault for going on one hand and saying, oh, we don't like Justin Fields, we want Trey Lance. And then on the other hand going, oh, we love Allen Robinson. Maybe it's a lesson that I need to be learning. Maybe it's something that I need to be changing. But, oh my God. Can we rank Allen Robinson in the top 24 wide receivers this week? I don't know if we can. But our next lesson learned, another thing that we crushed, Tyson Williams. It looks like this is not a running back that anymore you can go through and just act as he's the guaranteed starter in Baltimore. You're looking at this with Tyson Williams, in that he comes out, he gets 5 carries out of this backfield. And I know a lot of people in the live streams were saying, Mason, are we sure we're not playing Tyson Williams? Tyson Williams has a great matchup here. And every single time that we got asked that, we said, no. I mean, you're going to see that you're going to have Latavius Murray and Devontae Freeman both continue to expand their role in this offense. And what happened? That was the exact same thing that we expected. I mean, with Tyson Williams, like we've already discussed, the reason that he had that committee role, that he was the lead in the committee through the first 2 weeks, was because he was the only running back that really knew the game plan. I mean, Latavius Murray came in and had almost the same amount of carries week 1 after he was there for like 3 days. So yeah, I mean, here, Tyson Williams, no longer startable. Like we said coming into this week, even though it was a great matchup against Detroit, we said you did not want to be starting him. 5 carries, no targets out of the backfield either. I mean, Tyson Williams just almost completely dead at this point. Now our next lesson learned, and this should have been a lesson that was burnt in your brain a long time ago, but Mike Williams is here to stay. Mike Williams, the wide receiver 2 overall so far this season. Mike Williams, the wide receiver 2 so far this year. He has 31 targets, 22 receptions, almost 300 receiving yards, and he has 4 touchdowns through 3 weeks. What's so frustrating is the fact with Mike Williams, this is a player that he's had this talent all along. The problem is the role that he had in his offense in 2020 and 2019, he was just a field stretching option. If you look at his average depth of target, this was a wide receiver that was exclusively being used to stretch the field and try to get behind the safeties. Now, what you're finding now with Mike Williams is he's getting used at every area, every level of the football field. And that's the exact transition that you had from Stephon Diggs from 2019 to 2020. That's what made Stephon Diggs so frustrated with that Minnesota Vikings coaching staff, is in 2019, they used him as the guy that was clearing out space underneath. And whenever he went to the Buffalo Bills in 2020, the main difference, it's not like Stephon Diggs became a significantly better wide receiver. It's that he was used as a prototypical alpha X wide receiver. He was used in running some slants over the middle. He was used running some comebacks. I mean, now you're getting that same level of usage from Mike Williams, a bona fide stud, alongside Justin Herbert. There's very little to say. Everybody has already kind of changed Mike Williams in their mind, but Mike Williams, like, will we have him ranked as a wide receiver 1 this week? Feels aggressive to do that 3 weeks into the season, but I think at this point, based on what we have seen, Mike Williams coming out, I mean, he won this game for the Los Angeles Chargers. I think maybe we have to do it. Okay, so now our next lesson learned. I know we are so arrogant, but we've had a great week. Looking at across my portfolio of all my fantasy leagues, looks like we're going to win a lot of money this year. I mean, this Atlanta Falcons running back situation makes it where you cannot start Mike Davis. There's nothing you could ever do to consider starting Mike Davis. He comes out and he sees 12 carries. 12 carries, that's cute, but Cordell Patterson gets 7 carries and 6 receptions out of this backfield. I mean, the usage for Cordell Patterson in the receiving game is the main thing I wanted to focus in on here. With Mike Davis, what did we discuss coming into the year? We discussed the fact that this was a player that was just not talented. I mean, if we went through, you looked at his entire career, he had played on like 5 different NFL teams. He quote unquote broke out at 28 years old. It was the clear sign that Mike Davis was purely driven by his situation in 2020, and he was a running back we wanted to avoid coming into 2021. Mike Davis, I don't know if you can start him because this was a great matchup going up against the New York Giants. So probably just, obviously you're not cutting him, but probably having to just put a must bench label on Mike Davis until we see otherwise. Now, our next lesson learned is, dear Lord, Najee Harris is going to get an absurd amount of usage in his receiving game. Now, of course, this game gets out of hand. Of course, you see Ben Roethlisberger throwing the ball a ridiculous amount of times. And also, Chase Claypool actually gets a decent amount of targets out of his backfield as well. But Najee Harris coming out, 14 carries, 40 rushing yards. You're going, oh my God, 14 carries, 40 rushing yards, no rushing touchdowns. Why did I start Najee Harris? But then you learn 14 receptions. He had 19 targets out of this backfield. He had over 100 receiving yards in this game. I mean, he came away with 28 PPR points this week without a single touchdown. A single touchdown for Najee Harris. This makes him someone that, while we discussed wanting to avoid him coming into the year based on the struggles that we are expecting with the Pittsburgh Steelers offense, with their offensive line and Ben Roethlisberger just falling off a cliff, I mean, that's happened, but at the same time, it hasn't mattered because with Najee Harris here, the usage in the receiving game is going to make up for all of that. I think you have to view him as a mid running back one from now on. I mean, how many running backs can you say you want over Najee Harris? Of course, I'm going to go update our rest of season rankings on Patreon probably after the game on Monday night, but Harris is probably going to be bumping up a considerable amount, even though Pittsburgh looks just as bad as we were worried about. Now, another thing that I have to rub it in, I have to say we were right. Who did we have on our must-bench wide receiver list? Rondell Moore. And this is what I'm so proud of myself with because we had so many questions in the live streams this week going, Mason, do I start Rondell Moore or wide receiver X? Do I start Rondell Moore or Devontae Smith? Every single time we were going, man, I love Rondell Moore. Rondell Moore is a player we loved coming into the NFL draft. This is a player that we were going through and we were trying to just target aggressively in our dynasty rookie drafts. But our problem with him is that you were seeing way too many snaps played for AJ Green, way too many snaps played for Christian Kirk, and Rondell Moore only played 47% of the snaps in week 2. So we said that he was a great talent. We want to be betting on Rondell Moore for the long haul, but he was someone you could not consider starting in week 3. So I hope that you listen. I hope that you picked up Rondell Moore from the waiver wire, but instead of putting him in your starting lineup, instead you put him on your bench. My stance with Rondell Moore has not changed at all after this week. I mean, he kind of had the same role that you were expecting. The only difference is we just know that it's going to take a little bit longer for us to put him in our starting lineup. It's still someone you want at the back half of your roster. Now, our next lesson learned is James Robinson looks like he is just going to be maybe getting his fantasy production as a receiving running back where you see him come out. He has 15 carries, which seems okay. I mean, you also look at Carlos Hyde having 8 carries. I don't necessarily think that the volume in the rushing game is going to allow James Robinson to get there from a fantasy football perspective. But getting 6 targets out of this backfield and then also adding on 134 total yards and a touchdown to go along with it. I mean, this is exactly what you were wanting from James Robinson in a game where the Jacksonville Jaguars were getting blown out. Of course, this game was actually really close until almost, I want to say like the end of the third quarter. But James Robinson looks like a player that you probably can start because he is going to get every single target out of the backfield. Carlos Hyde didn't get targeted a single time. Okay, so now our next lesson learned is, God, the New York Jets fans are probably jealous of what the Chicago Bears have in Justin Fields. Zach Wilson is not giving anything for this New York Jets offense. And I know a lot of people want to come out here and they want to blame it on the offensive line. Of course, that's going to be the main thing, the popular thing to do when your rookie quarterback's failing is just go offensive line, offensive line, offensive line. And yes, it can be very much a real problem. Yes, it can be very much something that needs to be addressed. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter why it's happening. All that matters is Zach Wilson is really underperforming. Zach Wilson is someone that's going to make it where we can't start any of these New York Jets anytime soon. I mean, I don't know what would have to happen for us to be willing to put Corey Davis back into our lineup, but let me pull up the Corey Davis stat line this week because I actually told some people in the live stream to go through and start Corey Davis whenever they were looking at pretty gross situations just because we were confident that he was going to be the wide receiver 1 in New York, even though that situation turned out to be a lot worse than we were expecting. Yeah, so Corey Davis, actually, I'm probably confident with. I'm proud of this call, to be honest. He came out, got 10 targets, 5 receptions, 41 receiving yards, but of course you just can't get anything going when the Zach Wilson-led New York Jets can't put up a single point on the board. Yeah, so you can't start any New York Jets for any time soon. Now our next lesson learned is going to be with the Los Angeles Rams, and here I have to hang my head low. We have to apologize in that for whatever reason, I guess Robert Woods is not the wide receiver he's been over the past 3 years. I don't know what happened to Robert Woods, but if I told you, hey, Matthew Stafford comes out. He throws for 343 passing yards. He has 4 passing touchdowns as well. I mean, Cooper Kupp doesn't even crack 100 receiving yards. I mean, are you excited about Robert Woods? You'd be jumping up and down with excitement about Robert Woods. But at the end of the day here, I mean, Robert Woods has 6 targets in this offense, but it doesn't really matter whenever Deshaun Jackson goes for 120 receiving yards. And of course, Deshaun Jackson, that's just going to be a spike play thing. That's going to be something that's not really going to be expected that often, but still, it's something I do want to be pointing out here as just a situation where it's possible to get that passing volume taken away from Robert Woods, as well as Van Jefferson seeing 6 targets in this offense. And Van Jefferson, someone that I had no interest in coming into the year. So you're actually having just so many secondary options, taking targets away from Robert Woods, taking production away from Robert Woods. You hate to see it, but it's happening. Now, our next lesson learned is when Alexander Madison is the starting running back for the Minnesota Vikings, you start Alexander Madison, despite what all the haters were telling us this year when we were calling Alexander Madison that must-start option, despite what everybody was saying about Alexander Madison, quote-unquote, failing when he was the starter before. No, I mean, if you looked at the larger sample, you saw that there were solid weeks from Alexander Madison when Dalvin Cook missed, that he stepped into a 3-down role. A lot of people were saying not to start him based off their 1 week memory that they have in a DFS spot that everybody jammed him in their DFS lineups. But no, Alexander Madison, 26 carries, 6 receptions, 182 receiving yards. I'm sorry, 182 total yards. If it was 182 receiving yards, this would be a completely different storyline. But yeah, I mean, just fantastic for a multitude of reasons here. And yeah, that's all I got for y'all. I know I was probably the most annoying person on the planet this week, but please keep in mind we've had a great day, and I think that we're just going to have a very profitable season from the indicators that we have gotten in this week. So I want to get excited, and I want to come out here, just run some victory laps, because y'all know I take the hate on. I call myself an idiot when we do very stupid things, so I have to at least call myself a genius when we do very smart things. So yeah, thank you so much for anybody watching this video who put up with my crap. Make sure you go down there, drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment if you want to get entered to win a Fantasy Flock Network hat. If you also just want to support the channel, let me know what your biggest takeaway was from week 3. And also let me know how much of an idiot I am. And yeah, that's all I got for y'all, and have a great day.